Hi everybody, this is Josh Culp. We are learning Daf Shui. We are on Daf Pei Aleph of Bava Kamma. And the Gemara here finally gets to a topic that a lot of you have been asking me about when I've been teaching this, both in the conservative yeshiva and online in various formats. And that's, is there such a thing as a payment for verbal attacks, verbal assault, verbal insults, verbal degradation? All of the things, and I've emphasized before, all of the things that we've seen so far have been physical, some kind of physical intervention, physical interactions that have caused the person to be liable. But what about if somebody just embarrasses somebody else, says something embarrassing to them, curses them? Can you sue them in a court of law? And I want to emphasize, the discussion here is not about what's right or wrong. The discussion is about what is legally pursuable. And so the question is, do the rabbis have a concept of what we're going to see here called biyashu b'dvarim? So, and that's exactly what we get over here. The Mishnah had said that if somebody spit and, Rav said that the Mishnah's liability for spitting on somebody refers only to when they spit on their person. But if they spit on their clothing, no, you're not allowed to sue them for spitting on your clothing, which I think is a very big limitation of the spitting liability in the Mishnah. I don't know why Rav Papa says that, but that is what he says. And the Gemara asks the question, V'nihavi ki biesh b'dvarim. Let it be like cursing somebody with words, embarrassing somebody with words. Amrei b'marava mishmei de Rabbi Yossi bar Avin zodomer b'yeshu b'dvarim patur miklum. So they say in the west, meaning in the land of Israel, in the name of Rabbi Yossi bar Avin, that somebody who curses somebody else with just words, or embarrasses, I shouldn't say curse, embarrasses somebody else with words is exempt. Again, I want to emphasize, this doesn't mean that it's okay. The rabbis aren't giving license to someone to do such a thing. They're just saying, well, it didn't hurt you so much, and therefore you're not able to sue somebody. Now, just to reflect on this for a moment, there are a couple ways we could read this. One is and I think some of the Rishonim read this in a very formalistic way, and that is that the antecedents in the Bible for the embarrassment payment are a physical interaction. They come from the story of the woman who intervenes in her husband's fights and grabs another man's genitalia. And since that is a physical assault, and the Torah uses the word mivushav, his embarrassing parts, and that's where the rabbis learn the payment for embarrassment. So rabbinic law remains faithful to Torah law. In the sense that the same way that the antecedents are physical interactions, the embarrasser physically interacts with the embarrassed person, so too they have to be in reality. In rabbinic law, we're limited to those kinds of embarrassment. Maybe a more holistic way of reading, something a little bit less formalistic, is maybe the rabbis are saying here, like, look, embarrassment is damages, right? Real damages. Just to be slightly embarrassed or even greatly embarrassed by words, we do have the option of ignoring words. It's a little bit harder. I mean, you can ignore physical interactions as well, but there's some kind of tangible presence of physical interactions, and there is not when it comes to verbal attacks. Now, that again is not to say that verbal attacks are right, but that maybe there's a statement over here that human beings can ignore verbal attacks, and it's much more difficult to do when they are physical physical embarrassing attacks. Now, I will point out two things. One is that there is a story in the Yerushalmi that gets picked up by many of the Rishonim, and that story in the Yerushalmi does involve a fine for somebody who verbally assaults someone else, and you will see that codified if you look in halachic sources. The other thing is that I'm just going to read from the Rambam, for instance, over here, and that is Hamevayeshet Chaviro b'dvarim, somebody who embarrasses somebody else with words, is exempt. However, this is the Rambam Chovel Mazik, Laws of Damages, chapter 3, halacha 5. However, he says the court should rule on this matter or make sure this doesn't happen, ligdor b'davar, whenever they see fit. and meaning that he is alluding to that the court should legislate this problem and deal with it on their own, meaning just because the Gemara says that there's no fine in the Talmud does not in any way stop a court from legislating some kind of post-Talmudic law that would fine somebody for embarrassing somebody else with words. And that's something I've said a lot throughout to all my teaching here, is that in the Middle Ages, a lot of these rules were enforced by the court, but in a way that the court saw fit, and not exactly in the same technical way that the Gemara imagines them being enforced. But that's another subject. So there's your answer to what do the rabbis think about verbal embarrassment.